Hey guys, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are gonna make a delicious treat yourself dinner with our new Love Adventure 4-pack. So to kick this off, we've got a coconut s'mores chocolate mousse, a Rosemary Dijon Ribeye steak, some Greek freak infused sweet potato puree, and an Acorn Squash Habanero Gratin. It is gonna be delicious. So we're gonna start with our coconut s'more chocolate mousse because it's gonna take the longest to set. You're gonna need 2 cans of coconut cream, some really yummy chocolate, 2 eggs, our s'mores seasoning, and a pinch of salt. You can replace the eggs with aquafaba if you wanna make this vegan friendly, and you can also throw in a little cream of tartar if you wanna cheat your egg whites a little bit. So, coconut cream, very important to get coconut cream and not coconut milk. When we open this up, there'll be a nice thick layer at the top, and we wanna keep that separate. So the trick here is when you stick it in, there'll be solid and then some softness underneath. And you wanna pull your cream out first and leave your liquid in the bottom. So there's all our cream. And there's our coconut water in there. You wanna save about 2 tablespoons of this for the recipe, and the rest you can store in your fridge or you can drink it. So next we're gonna just roughly chop up our chocolate. I have a whole bar of milk chocolate and a whole bar of dark chocolate. Depending on your preference, you can do both dark, you can do both milk. I just like to balance it out and add a little bitterness. I'm just gonna stack these on top, and then I like to cut it at an angle and just go all the way down. And for any of your big pieces, just go across one more time. And that's it. And we are gonna put this kind of in a homemade double broiler. I'm gonna dump it into a bowl with 2 tablespoons of our leftover coconut water and 2 tablespoons of our coconut cream. And this is gonna go just over some warm water on the stove so we can melt that chocolate up. So I've got about a cup of warm water in this small saucepan, and this bowl is gonna go right on top, and it's just gonna slowly warm up this chocolate and melt it into a really, really silky smooth consistency. You want this indirect heat so you don't end up burning your chocolate or cooking that coconut cream. We're also gonna throw just a quick pinch of salt in to balance out some of those sweet flavors. So while your chocolate's melting, you're gonna grab your 2 eggs and we're gonna crack them open very carefully to separate those egg whites out. Normally it's okay to get a little yolk in there, but when we're making mousse, we wanna make sure that not a single drop of yolk gets in this bowl. So if you do happen to break your yolk, you need to either swap bowls or really thoroughly clean your bowl and start again. We really just only want whites in here. If you're nervous about egg whites, this would be the step that you could throw in about a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and it's just gonna help stabilize those egg whites and make them whip up really fast. You can do this in a stand mixer, you can do this with a hand mixer. I don't feel like getting my stand mixer out, so I'm just gonna whip it up using this guy. And you want to go until they are big, white, fluffy, stiff peaks. So you'll notice that it's starting to pull away from the glass. It's holding that peak when you pull it off. And if you're really feeling confident, if you tip it over, nothing should fall out. That's your true test of a good whipped egg white. So now that your egg whites are stiff and your chocolate is still melting, we are gonna add in about 3 tablespoons of our s'mores blend, 1 tablespoon at a time. So you just wanna get a big heaping spoonful in there, and then you're gonna whisk it in between. All right, so our s'mores are combined. Our chocolate is nice and melted. You wanna let this bowl cool till it's about room temperature. If you go straight in with your hot chocolate, you are gonna cook these egg whites and you're gonna end up with chocolate s'more scrambled eggs. So once your bowl is nice and cool, you can I would do just like a spoonful at a time and just slowly incorporate it. You wanna just quickly kind of mix it together because we don't want to lose all that air that we just beat into these egg whites. So just spoon by spoon, very loosely folding it together, not over mixing. There's going to be plenty going in, so if it's streaky at this stage, don't worry about it. So we've got our chocolate and our egg whites really nicely combined, and then all we're gonna do, super easy, we're gonna pour these into the ramekin. So you have one for tonight, one for your midnight snack, and one for breakfast in the morning. And just try to get them as even as possible. I tend to go low in the beginning so then I can go back and add more to anything that isn't quite as even as I'd like it to be. I think our midnight snack one in the middle needs a little bit more love. And then these are just gonna go in the fridge for about 2 hours until they're nice and stiff. And we're gonna use our leftover coconut cream to make a really yummy vegan whipped cream to go on top of it. So the next recipe we're gonna focus on is our acorn squash gratin. It is packed with veggies and also smothered in spicy cheese deliciousness thanks to our honey hob rub. We are gonna use an acorn squash. You can also use a delicata squash, really anything where you can eat the skin. We don't wanna waste time with peeling some squash right now. Then we've got a whole bunch of kale, an assortment of mozzarella and Parmesan cheese, some heavy whip, a lemon, an onion, and of course, smoky honey hob. We're gonna start with cutting up our delicata squash. So it normally always has a flat side. Just start with that down, and then you wanna try to get one end of your knife down and push all the way through. And we are just gonna scoop these guys out, just like you would a pumpkin. The best part is it normally comes out pretty much one scoop. And then flip them over face down. So this one's good, it doesn't have its little stem on it, but this guy still does, so we're just gonna slice that off, and then we're gonna take them down the middle, and then in quarters. Squash are a little tough to cut, so make sure you have a sharp knife and always keep an eye on your fingers. And we've got kind of an assortment of widths going on. It's just gonna get you kind of a variety of textures, which I always think is a good thing. You get some that are crispier, you get some that are softer, and it all just pairs really nicely together. Next, we're gonna prep our kale. I really like this curly variety. I think it just has better flavor and is a little softer. The easiest way to strip your kale is just pinch it and pull all the way down to get that woody stem out. Just set them aside. So I've got about half a bushel of kale stripped, and just like we did with the chocolate, we're just gonna give it a rough chop to get it broken up into some more bite-sized pieces. This is gonna seem like a lot of kale, but similar to spinach, it is gonna cook down a ton, and it's gonna make you feel better about eating it covered in cheese sauce. So in your small baking dish, we're gonna take our cut up acorn squash and our kale, and just get it kind of mixed up in there. Does not have to be in any sort of rhyme or reason. It's gonna kind of turn into a yummy little casserole in there. I like to grab some from underneath. Just until you kind of like the way everything's balanced out. If you've got extra kale, save it for a salad for tomorrow, or throw it away, whatever floats your boat. And in this bowl, we are gonna take about, we'll say 2 cups of our heavy whipping cream. We'll do the 2 tablespoons of our Smoky Honey Hab. Half a lemon, some extra kale on it. So we've got half a lemon squeezed in here. I've got maybe half a small onion just sliced into strips that we're gonna drop in there as well. Give it a rough mixture just to break up those onions and get them nice and coated. And then, you guessed it, it's going in. So we're just gonna gently pour it in. Make sure we get that mixture down in the nooks and crannies. And then just take your fork and just kind of poke around. Give a rough little mixture. So we've got everything mixed up really nicely. We're gonna top it with a heavy pinch of salt, a big pinch of some black pepper, and then this cheese that has been waiting so patiently. And this is another one where get a little messy and really kind of shove it down in there. So then you get some kind of hidden pockets of cheesy, gooey goodness. And then once your cheese is to your liking, you can cover this with foil, or in my case, pop a lid on it, and then it's gonna go in the oven at about 350 degrees for 30 minutes, and then take the lid off and finish it off for about 15 minutes. The next dish is gonna be some delicious sweet potato puree. And if you are not a sweet potato fan, this recipe might change your mind. And all we're gonna do to start with is take your sweet potatoes, stab them all over with a fork, roast them in the oven with that veggie casserole, and then pull them out, blend them, and it is gonna be a delicious, velvety, Greek freak sweet potato puree to put your Rosemary Dijon steak on top of. I like to put mine just on the rack. So our sweet potatoes are ready to come out of the oven. They've been in there for about an hour. So you want them to be about fork tender. You're gonna see all those sugars kind of coming out and caramelizing. We're gonna let these rest until they're cool enough to touch. We're gonna peel them off, throw them in a food processor with some salt, pepper, smoked paprika, butter, milk, and of course, our Greek freak. So while your sweet potatoes are resting and getting to room temperature, we're gonna pull our steak out. We're gonna wanna heavily salt it. So you can see I've done some of it already. It's gonna pull that moisture out, but also tenderize our steak and give us a dry surface to get a really yummy sear on. So now that our sweet potatoes are naked, they're really easy to peel, we're gonna stick them in our food processor with all the rest of our ingredients. I'm gonna just cut them in half a little bit, just make them a little bit easier to maneuver. Actually, it's always easier to bring it down to you. And just plop those in. I like to put my butter in next with that warm sweet potato to start melting it, our milk, and then we'll say a heavy pinch of paprika, give it some of that smoky flavor, a little pinch of black pepper, hearty pinch of salt, we'll say 2 pinches. And this is gonna get about 2 tablespoons of Greek freak. And then we just blend it till smooth. So we have a delicious ribeye here that we are gonna sear in a cast iron, really simply, really easy. We're gonna throw it in, get a nice crust on one side, and about halfway through, we'll throw in our butter, some garlic, and some rosemary. And then once it's finished, we'll pull it out to rest and make a quick pan sauce, and then your meal will be complete. You want a nice hot cast iron that's just smoking with no oil in it. So while our steak is cooking, we're gonna go over the ingredients for our pan sauce real quick. I've got half a diced onion. Use that other half from your Acorn Gratin. I've got some black pepper, butter, salt, some Dijon mustard, and of course, our Rosemary Dijon. I like my steak about medium rare, so that'll be about 8 to 10 minutes in the pan, or 130 degrees if you're using a thermometer. So for our pan sauce, you wanna leave as much of that kind of meat, juicy goodness in there as you can. Get out any burnt bits. We're gonna dump in our butter and our onions to get it started. Just to deglaze that pan and get all of that good stuff up. Another heavy pinch of salt. Heavy pinch of black pepper. Let that butter melt. And then we'll add in our mustard. So I threw another rosemary sprig in there just for the extra flavor. And then we're gonna throw in probably about, let's say 2 tablespoons of mustard. And we're gonna turn the heat on our pan down. I've got a little homemade broth that I'm gonna throw in here as well. You can also use white wine, beef broth, chicken broth, whatever you've got laying around to thin out our consistency a little bit. If you're looking to complement your Love Adventure meal with some wine, I highly recommend either getting a Cab Sav or a Malbec. We got these from our partners over at Wine Access. Go check them out. So we removed our pan sauce from heat, and then I'm gonna sprinkle in about a tablespoon, let's say a tablespoon and a half, can never have too much, of our Rosemary Dijon, just to enhance that flavor even more. And let's pull this guy out of there. Nobody wants that hanging around. And then when we plate up, this is gonna get spooned over our steak and that sweet potato puree. So we have wrapped up our treat yourself meal. I recommend always starting with dessert, our s'mores coconut mousse with a guilt-free coconut whipped cream on top. And then we've got our honey habanero Acorn Squash Gratin to make ourselves feel better. And of course, our sweet potato puree with some Greek freak, topped with our steak and our delicious Rosemary Dijon pan sauce. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to leave these dishes until tomorrow and to go sit on the couch and enjoy my treat.